everyone, it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is part of a hop for the Facebook group Handmade Happiness, and the monthly theme is to case yourself using markers or watercolor. So here is an older card that I chose. It's a fun fold that I thought we would step up a little bit this time. So instead of using stamps to create the background, we're going to be using this embossing folder. So you can see how I put the pieces in the embossing folder. That one just went in the regular way. That one went in the middle piece. The top parts went in the very bottom, and then I put that through my cuddle bug. The last piece, though, was the most difficult. I put that all the way in the embossing folder and then only put the top plate on the bottom fourth of the card so that none of the middle embossed or the top re-embossed. I hope that makes sense. We're going to put these pieces aside, and then we're going to work on the main image, which is a stamp from Kindred Stamps that you see here. We're going to stamp it onto some Canson XL watercolor cardstock because we're going to be using the Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils. I'm going to put the stamp in my Stamp Perfect, and we're going to be using some Versa Fine black onyx ink. I always get that wrong. I always want to say Versamark, but it's Versa Fine. I stamped this a couple times to make sure that it has a crisp black image, and to make sure it's stamped well, I used that dry eraser tool that I got from Target. So I let that dry for a little bit, and then I wanted to draw in the background because I wanted it to be a scene. I wanted it to be her on stage. So I drew in a stage and then some curtains. Now, I'm no artist, but I think that it actually looks like a stage when you see the final product. So I hope you guys agree that it looks like that. I'm just adjusting some of the lines because I didn't draw it perfectly. And then we are going to get ready to watercolor with the Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils. So I left a lot of this watercoloring in because I wanted to talk a little bit about the hop. It's from the Facebook group Handmade Happiness, and every month we have a theme and 2 different techniques that you can choose between. So this month was case yourself and using watercolor or markers. And in the original design, I used markers, so I decided to use my Inktense watercolor pencils this time because if you guys know me, I'm not great at watercoloring, but I do love using my watercolor pencils from Inktense. I think that they make watercoloring so much easier. So if you guys are not following us over on Facebook, I will leave the link to the Facebook group down below in the more information section. Please check out everyone's videos. Everyone on this hop is super talented and has a lot to share. So hopefully you guys get inspiration along the way. Now back to the image that I'm watercoloring. I don't tend to use I love creating scenes, but I don't tend to draw things in. I know that there are people who draw in tables and draw in whole scenes and things like that. If I can't do it with a stencil or a die, it doesn't usually get done. But for some reason, this didn't intimidate me very much because it was a small section. So I just thought that it would be easy to create a scene here. I could draw some very basic shapes. So I'm working on the stage right now, and if I really wanted to do some shading, I could have gone in there with a gray and then gone over and put in some shadows with this black, but I didn't think about it. I was just trying to lay some color down. However, when I do the curtains, I do lay color down. I lay a very light red down and then add in some of the pleating that would be in the curtains with some darker reds and then go back in. I'm a very impatient crafter and don't like to wait for things to dry. I don't know if you guys are the same way, but I hate waiting for things to dry. So I will tend to just do when it comes to watercoloring, I'll tend to just layer right over something that is still wet instead of waiting for it to dry to add in the shadows and the highlights. So don't be like me and don't rush things, but I think with the curtains I was a little bit better. So I left in just a little bit of this coloring so you guys can see what I did. You see that I have one layer of light red down on the top, and then I am going in on the sides of the curtains and going in with a little bit of a darker red just to add a little bit of darker color to it because I thought the top was a little bit too light. I added a little bit of water to the right side, and you can see that one is a little bit lighter than the left, and I just go back and correct it, keep adding, wait for it to dry, and then keep adding color to it. So I hope that you guys are finding a lot of inspiration along the way for the hop, and that I can't wait to see everyone's projects. I haven't seen anything as of recording this video yet because nobody's videos have gone live. So I can't wait to see what everybody has made along this hop. So here you go. I'm just adding in where the pleats would be. I'm picking up a little bit of the darker red and going over the color that I've already laid down to add a little bit of it in. I do have a little bit of black on my brush, so it is adding a little bit of darkness to the color red that I'm picking up. And if you notice, I've done a couple different techniques here. I've laid color right down to the watercolor paper with the pencil, and I've also used my brush with a little bit of water to pick some color up right from the tip of the pencil. You can do it either way, and I think that both ways are effective. It just kind of depends on what my mood is. If I've already have a little bit of color down, I will generally tend to pick up the color from the tip of the pencil rather than putting it over top of it. So just going back in and adding a little bit more the darker red to it. So now that that's almost finished, I colored her rest of her off screen, just added a little bit of the like a dark navy blue to the background. And now we are working on adding color to the pieces to the front because I thought it was just too plain. So I picked up some black soot distress oxide, and I'm going to go over the entire piece. Now I'm just laying down a piece of Swiffer cloth just to try to protect my hands, but you see it's not really working, but also to try not to get fingerprints on that piece. I thought I was being careful and not getting ink on the back, but that didn't happen. So we're going to ink the front and the back of this piece. Now this piece is the bottom that is going to be held to the card by that middle section that we're going to put Annie on, the stamped Annie on. So once that's done, I put that to the side to let that dry for a minute, and then we are working on the top. So I'm going to take I took some washi tape to mask off the back, and then I took a piece of scrap paper. This actually happens to be an MFT thank you card, I think, or no, I'm sorry, it happens to be a receipt. And so that I can put my hand down because I have ink on my left hand, and knowing me, I will get ink all over the back of my white card and it will drive me bananas. So we're just going to ink that piece up, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do the inside or not. Off camera, I went ahead and colored in the top piece with some black soot distress oxide. Next, we're going to work on the connector piece. I put some Honeybee Be Creative glue on the back of the watercolor panel and then attached it to the connector. And I didn't tell you guys how I created this connector piece. What I did was I left 1 3/4 inches on the top as well as the bottom, and then this connector piece is 2 inches. Now you can make this connector piece as long as chunky or as narrow as you'd like, just by changing up the size of the pieces of cardstock that you leave on the top and then cut off for the bottom. Now, as you can see here, when I was gluing it together, I am impatient and it fell off. So I have to hold it back into place so that the Honeybee Be Creative glue will dry. So now I'm going back in and adding some details with my white gel pen. When you watercolor over a stamped image that is not heat embossed, sometimes you lose some of the fine detail. So I like to go back in with a micron pen as well as a white gel pen to add those details back in. The last thing that we're going to do for the card is stamp the sentiment down, and we're going to be using a sentiment from the same stamp set that we got the main image from. It's going to say, "A little note for you." We stamped it in the VersaFine black onyx ink. And that's it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this card and that you're having fun along the hop. Please like, comment, and subscribe to everyone, and I'll see you guys again real soon for another video.